Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We are going to continue on our Seth material reading, and today we're going to be reading chapter 14. Here we go. Chapter 14, Dreams, a Pseudo-Demon, Therapeutic Dreaming. One night, I had a frightening dream that seemed very real. I found myself in our bedroom, out of my body, and suddenly I realized that someone or something was directly above me. The next minute, I was pushed down to the foot of the bed, off into the air, and then down to the dark corner of the bedroom floor. Above me was what I can only describe as a big black thing, like a bloated, blurred human form, but larger and very solid. It sounds ridiculous, but I knew that this thing was out to get me. I knew that I was out of my body, and I was overwhelmed with astonishment as well as very frightened. Although I'd read of people being attacked by demons or the like while they were projecting, I just didn't believe in demons. So what was it? I didn't have time to wonder because it bit me several times on the hand. It was amazingly oppressive and kept up its efforts to drag me farther away from my body into the bedroom closet. In dismay, I heard Rob snoring. In any case, I wasn't in my physical body, and he probably wouldn't know anything was wrong anyhow. And where was Seth? Where were all those guides who were supposed to come running to your aid when you got in predicaments like this? All these thoughts went scurrying through my mind as I tried to fight this thing off. I was very conscious of the creature's weight, which was really amazing, and its intent, which was to maul me up as much as possible, if not to kill me outright. Don't panic, I told myself, trying desperately to retain some semblance of calm. But the thing pressed down and was about to bite me again. This time I thought, to hell with not panicking, and I started to yell my head off. I knew it wasn't my physical head, but I hoped that my shout would either frighten the creature away or attract some kind of help. The thing pulled back for an instant, much like a huge startled animal, and I slipped from beneath it and shot fast as a rocket for my body, with it after me. In other words, I beat a fast, cowardly retreat. I hit my body so quickly that my physical head was spinning, and no matter, my body never felt so welcome. For a minute, I was afraid to open my physical eyes. Boy, if it's still here, I've had it, I thought. But it was gone. At least it was in another level of existence. I thought of waking Rob to tell him, but decided not to interrupt his sleep. Now that I was safe, I was more than a little ashamed of myself for being such a coward. But I wasn't so complacent that I felt like going right back to sleep either. So I got up, drank a glass of milk, and thought of all the things I should have done, like saying grandly, "Get thou behind me, Satan," or some such. At least I could have done. The least I could have done, I thought, was bite back. The next night, we had our regular Wednesday night Seth session. Before I tell you what Seth had to say about this incident, a little backtracking is in order. I'd been depressed for several days before the incident, brooding, though I should know better, on the negative attitudes that sometimes seem to surround us. Worse, I recognized many of them in myself: resentments, fears, and anger. Now, Seth said, our friend, meaning me, attempted to choose a different battlefield last night. He decided to think of all negative feelings as enemies and to give them form in another plane of reality where he could do battle with them. This was not an astral plane, but a lower one. The energy behind this black thing was the energy of hidden fears, but such a thing could be formed by anyone, since there are fears in any man. Rupert tried to isolate them, give them form, and fight them all at once. The thing was actually a rather clumsy lower dimensional animal, a provoked dumb dog of other dimensions who then attacked him, symbolically enough, by biting. Anything so created entirely of fears would be frightened and particularly angry at its creator. It could do nothing but attack to protect whatever reality it had, for it knew Rupert created it only to slay it, if possible. It did have reality, therefore. Rupert leapt back to safety and normal consciousness. The thing then dissipated as far as Rupert was concerned, for when Rupert ran home, he automatically withdrew the energy of his attention from it. Rupert tried to separate himself, all those elements he considers negative, and fight them at once, almost as if in doing so he could remove evil from the universe. He tried to destroy the animal of evil, and it bit him back. Now, evil does not exist in those terms, and even illness or fear are not necessarily enemies, as much as aids to understanding and means to a greater end. Seth went on to say, the evil that Rupert imagined he was projecting outward does not exist, but because he believed it did, he formed the materialization from his fears. It was the shape of his recent depression. In larger terms, there is no evil, only your own lack of perception. But I know this is difficult for you to accept. But this fact in Rupert's safeguard is in his out-of-body travels as long as he remembers it. The words, "May peace be with you," will get him through any difficulty in other layers of reality, for as he formed that image, others also form images, and he could encounter them. To wish them peace will give them some comfort, for they do have a kind of reality. To fear them is to put yourself into their realm of reality, and then you are forced to fight on their terms. There is no need for this. In a sort of backhanded compliment, Seth asked Rob to tell me that my abilities were improving. It was a well-made thought form. Now, I don't propose for a moment that any of my readers attempt such a foolhardy venture, but I do suggest that perhaps some of them have already done so without knowing it, waking only with the memory of a particularly bad nightmare. This episode was an out-of-body experience from the dream state, though, and it will serve to make one point. Dream reality is as valid and real as waking reality. Dreams definitely affect daily life. They can improve our health or help deepen a mood of depression. There are ways to use dreams purposefully, however, to improve our existence, even though I admit that the last instance was not a very good example. It has been known throughout the ages, that dreams can give us clues to all kinds of behavior. Psychoanalysts use dreams to delve into subconscious motivations, but few people know how to utilize dreams creatively to improve health, gain inspiration, restore vitality, solve problems, and enrich family relationships. Seth offers some evocative suggestions as to how dreams can be used as direct therapy. And some of his concepts could be of great aid in self-help programs and in psychotherapy. He starts off by saying the personality is composed of energy gestalts. As the personality is changed by any experience, it is changed by its dreams. And as an individual is molded by his physical environment to some extent, so is he molded by the dreams which he himself creates. The self is limitless. When your perceptions fail, it seems to you that boundaries appear. For example, it seems to you that dreams cease when you are no longer aware of them. This is not so. On one level, the personality attempts to solve problems through dream constructions and often gives freedom to actions that cannot be adequately expressed within the confines of waking life. If the attempt fails, then the problem or action, as we've seen before, may materialize as an illness. Consider, for example, a situation in which a personality needs to express dependency, but feels such expression inappropriate. If he's able to form a dream in which he plays a dependent part, then the problem may be solved within the dream state. In many instances, this is precisely what happens. The individual may never recall such a dream, but the experience would be valid and the dependency expressed. Much work has been done to interpret dreams, but little to control the direction of activity within them. Upon proper suggestion, this can be an excellent method of therapy. Negative dreams tend to reinforce the negative aspects of the personality, helping to form vicious circles of unfortunate complications. Dream actions can be turned toward fulfilling constructive expectations, which can themselves affect a change for the better. Many illnesses could largely be avoided through such dream therapy. Rather harmlessly, aggressive tendencies could be given freedom within the dream state. Suggestions would be given that the individual involved would experience, say, aggressiveness within a dream. It would also be suggested to him that he learn to understand his aggressions by watching himself while he was dreaming, watching the dream as he would a play. If I may indulge in a fantasy, theoretically, you could imagine a massive experiment in dream therapy where wars were fought by sleeping, not waking nations. When I first read this session, I thought this was a great way to get rid of your repressions. Dream them away. If you're really furious at someone and don't dare retaliate, then you can give yourself the suggestion before sleep that in a dream, you really get even. But it isn't that easy. Seth says quite firmly, there are other considerations that must be understood. When aggressiveness is the problem, for example, the preliminary dream suggestion should include a statement that the aggression will not be directed against a particular person. In all cases, it is the intangible element, aggressiveness here, that is the problem, and not the person against whom the individual may want to vent it. We do not want an individual to suggest that he dreamed of harming another. There are several reasons for this, including telepathic realities that you do not yet understand, and guilt patterns, which would be unavoidable. We're not talking about substituting dream action for physical action. We are discussing particular problems that need treatment. Over and over, Seth says that a dream or imaginative experience is as real as any waking event. If you have a period of depression, you're apt to have depressing dreams during the same period. But Seth suggests the following exercise as dream therapy. Before sleep, suggest to yourself that you will have a pleasant or joyful dream that will completely restore your good spirits and vitality. Unless the depression is very deep-seated, it will be broken or greatly weakened when you awaken. I've used this method before. I've used this method often with excellent results. Sometimes I've remembered the dream, sometimes not, but I've always awakened, refreshed, and renewed, and the effects last. The dreams I've recalled during such instances have been inspirational, strong enough not only to conquer a period of the blues, but to restore me to exceptionally good spirits. While all of this is of practical interest, Rob and I are even more intrigued by Seth's explanation of dream reality. Since I've had many out-of-body experiences from the dream state, I was rather concerned about the reality of the environments in which I find myself. Seth began his discussions on the nature of dream reality very soon after the sessions began, and they still continue. Until I learned from Seth to monitor my own dreams and awaken my critical faculties, I was simply astounded by some of his statements. Consider this early passage from session 92, which I now accept as basic. Each dream begins with a psychic energy which the individual transforms not into physical matter, but into a reality every bit as functional and real. He forms the idea into a dream object or event with amazing discrimination, so that the dream object itself gains existence and exists in numerous dimensions. Although the dreamer creates his dreams for his own purposes, selecting only those symbols which have meaning to him, he projects them outward into a value fulfillment and psychic expansion. The expansion occurs as the dream is acted out. A contraction occurs as the dreamer is finished with the dream events, but the energy cannot be taken back. Seth calls dream-created personalities, such as my black thing, dual hybrid constructions. In my case, the expansion he's speaking of occurred as I formed it with my own psychic energy. The contraction took place as I withdrew the main energy of my attention from it, but I could not take back the energy that I had given it that resulted in its existence. The creature continued to exist, but not in my dimension. It was set free on its own. Still speaking of drama, Seth says, energy projected into any kind of construction, psychic or physical, cannot be recalled. but must follow the laws of the particular form into which it has been for the moment molded. Therefore, when the dreamer contracts his multi-realistic objects backward, ending for himself the dream he has constructed, he ends it for himself only. The reality of the dream continues. The energy, as Seth explains it, can be transformed but not annihilated. Seth has answered many questions that were in Rob's mind and are probably in your own. How is it that ordinary daily life seems much more real to us than any dream existence? And if such a universe is valid, why doesn't it intrude on our daily life even more? At least we are all more or less agree on what happens physically, but dreams are highly individual. How can there be any continuity to a dream universe? Within such a universe, how could anyone possibly agree with anyone else as to what was happening? First of all, Seth said, the physical universe itself is a conglomeration of diverse individualistic symbols, none of which means precisely the same thing to any two individuals, and in which even so-called basic qualities like color and placement in space cannot be relied upon. You merely focus upon the similarities. Telepathy could be called the glue that holds the physical universe in precarious position so that you can agree on the existence and properties of objects. So when you consider the dream world, you have the same sort of universe, only one constructed within a field that you cannot physically perceive. But it has more continuity than the world you know, and there are similarities within it that are amazing to behold. For one thing, those who know the existence on physical level now have, because of certain cycles, lived before at approximately the same historical periods. They possess an inner familiarity, a cohesiveness that belonged to a more or less specific period and to periods before where they inhabited the same sort of reality. Their dream experiences then are not so diverse as you might suppose. Certain symbols are constructed into realities in the dream system, then in much the same manner that ideas are constructed into matter in the physical system. The same sort of psychic agreement holds the dream system together as holds the physical system together. If a man could actually focus upon those unrecognized elements in the physical universe upon which no agreements can be reached, if he could focus upon the dissimilarities rather than the similarities, then he would wonder what gave anyone the idea that there was even one physical object upon which man could agree. He would wonder what collective madness permitted man to select from a virtual infinity of chaos, a mere handful of similarities, and make of it a universe. So do you, viewing the seeming chaos of dream reality, wonder how I can say that it contains cohesiveness, actuality, and comparative permanence? Let me take a break here for a minute. I will be right. Okay. Took a little pause there. Sorry about that. So let's continue. I don't remember where I left off. So I'm going to start with the first paragraph. Okay, so here we go. The same sort of psychic agreement holds the dream system together as holds the physical system together. If a man could actually focus upon those unrecognized elements in the physical universe upon which no agreements can be reached, if he could focus upon the dissimilarities rather than the similarities, then he would wonder what gave anyone the idea that there was even one physical object upon which man could agree. He would wonder what collective madness permitted man to select from a virtual infinity of chaos, a mere handful of similarities, and make of it a universe. So do you, viewing the seeming chaos of dream reality, wonder how I can say that it contains cohesiveness, actuality, and comparative permanence? One reason I think that dreams seem so chaotic and meaningless at times is simply that we only remember dim fragments of them and forget the unifying factors. Another reason is that dreams have an intuitive, associative logic that has to be interpreted, and in which time, as we know, it has little meaning. According to Seth, some dreams are simple enough, dealing with unresolved present problems or events. Even in these, however, the dream event may also represent events from past lives. Each dream object is actually double or triple decked, a symbol for other deeper data. A dream involving reincarnational information, for example, may also serve to help us face a present-day problem by reminding us of other unused abilities inherent in our personalities. I've had two particularly vivid reincarnational dreams. One occurring shortly after our sessions began really frightened me because I was afraid that it might be precognitive. I dreamed that I was an old woman in a very poor hospital ward of some kind. I was dying of cancer and knew it, but wasn't a bit frightened. An old man beside me was also about to die. I told him not to worry, that I would be there to help him. Then I died, but there seemed to be no break in consciousness. I helped the old man out of his body and kept telling him that everything was all right. We asked about the dream in the next Seth session. Seth told me that it referred to my death as a medium in Boston in the last century. He had given us some information about this life in previous sessions, and now he told me that I wouldn't again die of cancer. A mistake in tactics on his part, since he had long ago told me to give up cigarettes, and I haven't complied. He has never tried to bully me into giving up the habit, merely saying that it didn't help my overall health or development. The other dream was even more vivid and really enjoyable. I don't know when I've had such a great time, certainly not in waking life. On Seth's suggestion, I told myself before sleep that I would have a dream that would give me further information about my own reincarnational past. At this time, I really didn't believe in reincarnation, but I said to Rob, well, what have I got to lose? I'll try it. Then I gave myself the suggestion several times and fell asleep. In this dream, Rob and I were both men in our late 20s and partners in the episode. I knew very well that we would later end up as Rob and Jane in this life, even though there was no physical resemblance. Rob, for example, was dark and swarthy, although now his skin and hair are both light. We wore long billowing trousers, bound tightly at the ankles, Turkish style. I do not remember our names. As the dream opened, we entered a large hall. A group of men, attired in the same costumes, sat on brightly colored pillows on the floor, roughly in a circle, with the center of the floor clear. I knew all of the men from a previous life in which I had been their leader, dying very young. These men had grown old while I had been reborn. Now I had come back to fulfill a promise I had made to return. I was well aware that they would not recognize me in this body in which they had not known me. I stated my case while they listened politely. Their spokesman told me that their dead leader had promised them that on his return he would perform one particular feat for which he was known to prove his identity. He asked me then to show my actions that I was this personality, ready to take over his rightful position. Rob and I both smiled, having anticipated the test. The center of the hall was vacant except for a few low tables. Rob to be asked that these be removed for the demonstration. This was done, and the men came closer, squatting on the pillows. My partner stood behind me. I took several light bouncing footsteps that were somehow ceremonial, and then left my physical body. It slumped down to the floor, and my partner gently moved it to the side. Then, in my astral body, I went flying through the hall, which had a high domed ceiling. Laughing at what I considered a great practical joke, I swung low above each man in turn and whisked off his turban. My partner handed me a feather. Apparently, he could see me clearly, and I could manipulate physical objects. Waving the feather through the air, I flew back and forth again several times so that watching the feather, the men could follow my progress above them. All the while, my partner was laughing loudly, and I was having a tremendous time. Finally, I returned to my body and stood up to the cries and shouts of recognition. The rest I hardly remember. I know women were brought to us, but smiling, we waved them away, preferring to talk to our old comrades first. All of us had very dark skin. Early in our sessions, Seth said he once had a Turkish existence, but we have no information on one of us. Oh, but we have no information on one for us. We have all kinds of gaps to be filled in our own past lives. However, because as long as I refused to accept reincarnation, I asked Rob not to ask for reincarnational material. Also, I became so upset when Seth gave such data that he probably thought it best to discontinue it for a while. When Seth was involved with a block of sessions on one subject, we hate to upset the continuity of the material by asking him to go into something else. And besides, we've learned that Seth eventually answers as many of our questions as possible. The Turkish life was the only colorful past life I've had to my present knowledge. The Boston life was ordinary enough, according to what Seth said. I made no big splash as a medium and gave sittings in order to help others and help pay the rent. I was quite undisciplined, however, and flighty, personality defects that I'm trying to correct in this life. This dream, I believe, was to remind me that I had once been in a position of authority and should not now be afraid of responsibility or of my abilities. Seth insists that many people have dreams that give them information about past lives, but often they do not remember them simply because they do not realize the importance of dreams in general. But what about the location, that Turkish hall? For real, how real was it? How real are the places we seem to visit while we sleep? Here's what Seth has to say. You think that you are conscious only when you are awake. You assume them yourselves to be unconscious when you sleep. The dice are indeed loaded on the side of the waking mind, but pretend for a moment that you're looking at this situation from the other side. Pretend that you are in a dream state and concerned with the problem of waking consciousness and existence. From that viewpoint, the picture is entirely different, for you are indeed conscious while you are asleep. While you sleep, the locations that you visit while dreaming are as real to you then as physical locations are to you now. Let us speak no more of a conscious or unconscious self. There is one self, and it focuses its attention in various dimensions. In the waking state, it focuses in physical reality. In the dream state, it is focused within a different dimension. If you have little memory of dream locations when you wake, you have little memory of physical locations when you are in the dream state. When the physical body lies in bed, it is separated by a vast distance from a dream location in which the dreaming self may dwell. But this distance has nothing to do with space, for the dream location can exist simultaneously with the room in which the body sleeps. Dream locations are not superimposed upon, say, the bed and chest and chair. They exist composed of the very same atoms and molecules that in the waking state you perceive as bed and chest and chair. Objects, remember, are the results of your perception. From energy, you form patterns, which you then recognize as objects and use. But the objects are useless unless you are forced within the dimension for which they are specifically formed. In some dream states, you form from these same atoms and molecules the environment in which you will operate. While dreaming, you cannot find the bed or chest or chair, and awake, you cannot find the dream location, which was there only moments before. This does not mean that we do not sometimes leave our bodies and travel in our dream or astral bodies to other physical locations. According to Seth, we do so often, whether or not we remember. Some of my students, for instance, have frequent out-of-body experiences from both the waking and the dreaming states. And on several such occasions, we seem to have met in my living room. Seth told us that this was possible long before I had any such experiences on my own, and before I had read about them. But his ideas of the interrelationship between waking and dream reality are fascinating. I mentioned the crucifixion, saying once that it was an actuality and a reality, although it did not take place in your physical time. It took place in the same sort of time in which a dream occurs and its reality was felt by generations. Not being a physical reality, it influenced the world of physical matter in a way that no purely physical event could. The crucifixion was one of the realities that enrich both the universe of dreams and the universe of matter, and it originated in the universe of dreams. It was a main contribution of that system to your own and could be physically compared to the emergence of a new planet within the physical universe. Seth is not saying here that the crucifixion was just a dream. He's saying that though it did not occur historically, it did happen within another reality and emerge into history as an idea rather than a physical event, an idea that changed civilization. According to Seth, of course, an idea is an event, whether physically materialized or not. Seth goes on to say, the ascension of Christ did not occur in time, as you know. It is also a contribution of the universe of dreams to your physical system, representing the knowledge that man is independent of physical matter. Many concepts and practical inventions simply wait in the dream system in abeyance until some man accepts them as possibilities within the physical frame of reality. Imagination is waking man's connection with the dream system. Imagination often reinstates dream data and applies it to particular circumstances or problems within daily life. The dream universe then possesses concepts which will someday completely transform the history of the physical world, but a denial of such concepts as possibilities delays their emergence. Some sessions tell us precisely how we form dreams, what chemicals are built up during waking consciousness and then released in dream making, and others deal with the electromagnetic composition of dream reality. But all through is the insistence upon what we would call, I suppose, the objectivity of dream life. Seth gave us instructions first in dream recall. Following this, he told us how to awaken our critical faculties while we were dreaming, and how to project our consciousness out of our bodies using a dream as a sort of launching pad. I was always delighted to try any experiments Seth suggested, and I still am. The resulting personal experience gave me subjective evidence of the validity of many of Seth's concepts. Besides, I like to do things on my own. Look at this projection from the dream state, for example. One morning after breakfast, I lay down to try a dream projection. This simply means that I can sometimes recognize when I'm dreaming, being my normal waking consciousness into a dream situation, and then use it to project my consciousness elsewhere. When I got to this point that morning, I felt myself leave my body, knowing all the while it was safe and comfortable in bed with the door locked. I traveled through the air so quickly that everything was a blur. Then I found myself on a strange city street. I was determined to find out where I was, so I walked around the block looking for street signs. The area was one of hotels and large shops. I saw 2 street names and finally decided to enter the lobby of one of the hotels. Here I found a bookshop and walked over to the shelves to look around. There were 3 books by Jane Roberts on ESP, and at the time of the experience, 1967, I'd written only one. Startled, I looked around again. Everything seemed normal enough. Wherever I was, it was a physical place. Something made me look up. A young man was looking at me with a pleased, cat caught the canary grin. He was one of the clerks, and I saw now that most of the clerks were quite young, and they were watching me. Oops. Sorry. I didn't know what to say or what to do or say. Look, I'm really in an out-of-body state. This is an astral projection. They'd never believe me. But what about the 3 books with my name on them? And the clerk's knowing smile. I haven't seen these books before, I said. I should think not. Where you live, you haven't written them yet, the young man said. With this, he started laughing, but in a friendly, open manner, as did the others who now gathered round. Where am I? I asked. He told me and said, but forget it. That is, you won't remember anyhow. Oh, yes, I will. I've trained myself. You just weren't that good at it yet, one of them said, and I really got angry. Whether I was astral traveling or not, these people were really having a good laugh at my expense. Look, I said, I'm in my astral body. My physical body, my physical body is home in bed. We know that, the young man said. The books caught my eye again. Go ahead, he said, memorize the titles. I'm sorry, but it won't do you any good. You won't remember. Now all of them smiled more sympathetically. I've already memorized 2 street names, I said. Are you sure I'm going to write these books? Here, you already have. No matter what anyone said, I was determined to remember any specific material I could, names, street signs, or route numbers. Finally, the clerk offered to take me on a tour when I told him I was going to explore the place alone in any case. He was very nice. We chatted, and he pointed out places of interest in the city, even while he warned me that I wouldn't be able to remember them. Then, without any warning, I felt myself pulled away. There was a terrific whooshing sound, and I was back in my body. I really felt tricked. Usually, it's quite difficult to go right back to the same location, but I was so angry that I willed myself back. Not that it did me much good. I landed on the same corner, but the young man was nowhere to be found. Then I set out to find the hotel, and while I swear I walked the block 3 times and recognized the other buildings, I just couldn't find the hotel. Finally, I returned to my body. Naturally, we asked Seth about the experience. He was giving us general information about the conditions we could expect to meet in projections from this dream state. There is a form within dream reality, he said, but form is first of all potential existing within psychic energy. The potential form exists long before its physical materialization. The house that you may live in within 5 years may not yet exist in your terms. It may not have been built yet. Therefore, physically, you would not have perceived it. Still, such a house does have form and does exist within the spacious present. Now, in certain levels of dream reality, forms such as this can be perceived. Within dream reality, you can come into contact with many other kinds of phenomena with which usually you do not have to deal. With the projection experiments you have in mind, this information becomes highly practical. I would like to give you some idea, you see, of what to expect. When you are manipulating within physical reality, you have a fairly simple set of rules used to serve you. Within dream reality, there is greater freedom. The ego is not present. The waking consciousness, dear friends, is not the ego. The ego is only that portion of waking consciousness that deals with physical manipulation. Waking consciousness can be taken into the dream state. The ego cannot, as it would falter and cause immediate failure. In your experiments, you will meet with various conditions, and until you learn control, it may be difficult to distinguish between them. Some you can manipulate, some you cannot. Some dream locations will be of your own making, and others will be strange to you. They will belong to other dimensions of reality, and you may blunder into them. It is quite possible for a dreamer to visit other planetary systems of the past, present, or future in your terms. Such visits are usually fragmentary and spontaneous. It is best that they remain so. Take advantage of them when they occur, but do not attempt such endeavors yet, however, as many difficulties are involved. While whole blocks of sessions deal with the methods used and the conditions that can be met in projections of consciousness from the dream state, Seth says that he has personally assisted me in some of my own projection experiments, but that I have not been aware of his assistance. I've never dreamed of Seth, and I find this rather strange. I've often awakened fully alert in the middle of the night, suddenly conscious that I've been given a kind of Seth session. I can hear Seth's word going through my head like signals. It's as if I'm tuning into a radio broadcast that I'm not supposed to be hearing. Because when I start to listen, there is a clicking sound in my head, and the station turns off. On 2 occasions, I heard enough to know what was being said and to whom the sessions were directed. Later, the people involved told me that they dreamed that Seth was speaking to them through me on the same nights as my experiences. I had said nothing to them. They volunteered the information. According to Seth, we do have shared dreams or mass dreams. These actually act as a stabilizing force in our daily lives. Are our dreams private? Apparently not nearly as private as we suppose. In the 254th session, Seth had this to say: in certain areas of mass, shared dreams, collective mankind deals with problems of his political and social structure. The solution he reaches within dreams realities are not always the same as though he accepts in the physical world. The dream solutions are held as ideals. However, without mass dreams, for example, your United Nations would not exist. At this stage of your development, it is necessary that selectivity be used. If you were aware of the constant barrage of telepathic communications that do impinge upon you, it would be most difficult for you now to retain a sense of identity. Shared dreams, then, are also usually well beneath awareness. And as identity is strengthened through experience, it automatically expands itself to add further realities within which it can manipulate. Excuse me. When you dream of others, they know it. When they dream of you, you know it. There would be nothing to be gained, however, in conscious awareness of these conditions at this time. In this session, Seth also mentioned John F. Kennedy and had some comments to make connecting racial problems with dreams. As you know, many people dream of Jack Kennedy's death in advance. On one level, the knowledge was available to the man himself. This does not mean that the death had to occur. It was a vivid possibility. It was also one of many solutions to several problems. While it was not the most suitable solution, it was the closest man could come at that particular time in physical reality. Seth went on to say that the emotional intensity of a dream is very seldom recalled in its full strength. Then, briefly, he mentioned mass dreams as a way of bringing about historical change. Those who are concerned about the present racial situation dream individually and collectively of changing it. They act out in their dreams the various ways in which changeabouts could occur. These dreams actually help bring about the resulting change that will then happen. The very energy and direction of the dreams will help change the situation. I could write several books dealing with dreams alone, as Seth explains them. According to the Seth material, our psychic development and growth, learning processes, and experience are all involved with our dream life. In it, we visit other levels of existence and even gain needed skills. There are definite electromagnetic, chemical connections that unite our stages of consciousness at such times, and he goes into detail about them. Through our dreams, we change physical reality, and our physical daily experience alters our dream experience. There is constant interaction. Our consciousness is simply directed in a different kind of reality when we dream, a reality as vivid as waking life. We may forget our dreams, but they're always part of us, even though we may not be aware of their entire reality. According to Seth, there are many other systems of reality in which we operate, all unknown to the waking ego. Not only are there universal systems composed of matter and antimatter, but there are an infinite variety of realities in between. Apparently, there are also probable realities in which we follow paths we may have taken, but did not in physical life. Seth says, the dream experience is felt directly by the inner self. Dreams have an electric actuality, as I told you. In this electric actuality, they not only exist independently of the dreamer, but they have what you might call tangible form, though not in the form of matter, as you are familiar with it. Seth told us many times that all experience is electrically coded within our cells, but not dependent upon them. And this also applies to dream experience. He goes on to say, a man's thoughts and dreams are far more reaching than he knows. They exist in more dimensions. They affect worlds of which he is unaware. They are as concrete in effect as any building. They appear in many guises within many systems, and once created cannot be withdrawn. The electric reality of a dream is decoded so that its effects are experienced not only by the brain, but in the furthest reaches of the body. Dream experiences, long forgotten consciously, are forever contained as electrically coded data within the cells of the physical organism. They exist within the cells along with all an individual's experience. The cells form about them. These electrically coded signals form counterparts of complete experience, and the pattern is then independent of physical reality. In other words, our dreams attain a certain immortality of their own, along with their own personalities. Seth makes this clear. Each individual from birth forms his own counterpart from built-up individual in continuous electrical signals that include his dreams, thoughts, desires, and experiences. At physical death, his personality then exists, detached from its physical form. Oh, end of chapter 14. Boy, this was a difficult chapter to get through for me. I don't know if it's because of the eclipse tonight. Oh, but the energy is very strong. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me today, for tuning in. And next week we will be continuing our Seth material with chapter 15. In the meantime, stay grounded. Hope everybody gets through the eclipse okay. And I'll see you next week. Okay, bye-bye now. Have a wonderful week.